Welcome back once again. We've created our JWT token. We've stored it into our Redis database. We're sending it back to the user, but now we have one last issue, and that is how do we store this information on the computer of the user? Because if they refresh, they need a way to store this token so that they don't have to sign in over and over again. And we also need to send this token actually in the authorization header so we can get our profile. And we're going to learn how to do that in this video. Let's have a look. Now, we're going to go back to the front end here and do some things. We know that when we sign in, we receive the user ID and the token. And we need a way to, first of all, save this token somewhere on our browser so that on each subsequent request, we're going to attach it to the header. Let me show you how that's done. I'm going to move some windows around. Let's do our front end window up here. And we're going to use the sign in component to actually do this because sign in on submit sign in, this is where we're doing our logic, where we receive the data user ID. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new method called save, let's call it save auth token in sessions. I know, a very descriptive name, but hopefully this way it will stick. And this is going to receive a token that we get from the backend. And this token is going to be stored in something called window.session storage. Now, what is session storage? And it's on the window object, so it means it's coming from the browser. Well, session storage is a way for us to save information onto a browser so that even if we refresh the page, it still remembers it. It still remembers the session. We can check this by going to Applications tab in our Developer Tools. And just like we've seen before, we have the manifest, service worker, we have cookies here. We also have local storage and session storage. Now, session storage here, as you can see, has information, a key value information that we can store. And even if I refresh the browser, it's going to remember it. Now, the difference between session and local storage, we'll actually explore that in a little bit. But for now, we're going to use session storage and store a key and a value. That is, we're going to store our session or our token in here. Let's see how we can do that. I'm going to say session storage, and this is a browser API that we can use. And we simply give it a set item to say that the key is going to be called token, and the value of the key is going to be the actual token. And that's it. We are just using this browser API, and we can save a token. So let's actually use this in the part where we receive the token. All we need to do is perhaps, instead of just checking data user ID, or we can even add a data.success to equals to true, because remember, that's what we sent from the backend. Now, in here, before we do the load user and on route change, we can just simply say this dot save auth token in sessions, and we're going to give it the data dot token that we receive. Again, remember that in our network tab, if you looked at sign in, which we've lost, let's do that one more time. Well, we don't need to do that one more time because we remember it. The token is received in the data.token. So I'm going to sign in and see if this works. Let's save. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Press A, at .com, A, sign in. All right. Now, nothing crazy happened, but if we go to Applications, look at that. We have our token now stored here. So even if I refresh, this token exists. And I can refresh, token exists. If I open up a new window and go to localhost 3001 and I open up developer tools, there's no session in here. That's not good. But what if we add local storage onto here? Instead of session storage, if we do local storage and sign in again, I'm actually going to close this and try this out all over again. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to clear this token to make sure that it's completely empty. And then I'm going to sign in. All right, now we have nothing in session storage, but we have something in local storage. And unlike session storage, if I refresh, I have this in local storage, but also if I open up a new window and do localhost 3001, look at that, I have my local storage in here. And I recommend using session storage. I personally prefer that over local storage, but depending on your need, you can use whichever one you want. Again, local storage persists a little bit longer than session storage. Session storage is simply just for one single session. All right, let's close this up and change this to session storage. Now, we have a bit of an issue here. We're still being asked to sign in every single time. And that is because on the back end, if you remember, we do a check to get auth token ID. And we haven't really sent our authorization headers when we sign in with our token. Right now, we're always going through the handle sign-in because we've never set the authorization header. So let's do that on the front end. Let's set the authorization header in the sign-in. Well, this is for the sign-in page, remember. And the sign-in page only shows up, if you remember, and go back to app.js. And by the way, this app.js is getting a little big. We might see why we want to incorporate Redux or separate out some of these methods. However, if we scroll all the way down, we see that the sign-in page shows up whenever the route is sign in. So the sign-in page should only show up in those instances when the user is not signed in. So perhaps up here, in our main component, that is the app, before we do anything, when component did mount, that is the first lifecycle method that is going to be heard before anything is rendered, we want to check something. We want to see if there's a session storage item, a token that we can just use so we can avoid all the sign-in logic. And in here, we can simply do a const token. And we're going to check the session storage. We're going to say window.session storage. And in here, we're going to say get item instead of set item. And we're simply going to get the token that we have, if they have a token. Now within here, we'll simply say if there is a token, well, in that case, just fetch us a new thing. And this new thing is going to be our sign-in endpoint. And the sign-in endpoint is going to have a few different things than what we've had before. First, it's going to be a second parameter that has a method of post, which we've seen before. It's going to have headers. That is an object. Well, first thing we have is a content type. We have to tell it what type it's going to be. And we're going to be sending it application JSON. Again, because we're going to send it into the body of the request. But also, a new addition is going to be the authorization headers. And this is just default headers that you can set with HTTP. And these authorization headers is simply going to have token, the token that we have in our session storage. Now, just a heads up here. Actually, the way you want to set authorization, the standard is to do something like bearer and then space add the token to that bearer. And I'm going to leave information for you to read up more about this. And it's a fairly easy thing to implement. For now though, just to keep things simple, I'm going to leave it like that so that we're sending the token with the authorization headers. And now we simply do a .then. And this .then is going to receive the data that we return, which is going to be the user ID, remember. So we're going to do a if statement, and this if statement is going to be data, if there's data, and perhaps we'll do another check for data.id. And if that works out, well then, in that case, I'm just going to say success for now. We need to get user profile. And let's just add a .catch here just in case anything errors out. And for now, just do a console log. All right, let's save this, make sure there's no errors, and go over what just happened. In signin.js, because this will be the first time that the user comes in, there's no authorization token that they have. So they must sign in, they send their email and password. And if everything checks out, the database is going to return for us the data.token, which we're going to save to our sessions in our browser. Now, if a user refreshes and comes back to our app, the first thing that gets rendered is the app.js. In there, in component did mount, before anything happens, we check the windows.sessions. We're going to get token and see if there's a token. Because if there isn't, well, nothing's going to happen. We're just going to keep going with our day like we've done before. Otherwise, if there is a token, we're going to run the sign-in endpoint because we no longer need to click that sign-in button to have the onSubmit sign-in function. We automatically fetch and give the authorization token header. So that the auth token header, if we go to the backend, is going to say, oh, there's an auth token. I'm just going to get the authorization token ID from our Redis database. And I'm just going to respond with your ID. So that way, when we go back, within here, we can do a fetch request to get profile. All right, let's give it a go. Let's test this out. I'm going to make sure that there's no tokens. Let's go to sessions and local storage. I'm going to delete that. Everything is clear. And I'm going to say a@a.com, let's sign in. All right, I'm able to sign in. If I go to console, it looks like this didn't get run. But that makes sense because we've just signed in. We just received our session token. However, if I refresh now, oops, and I am not getting anything because, well, you might have noticed this. I need to actually run the .then response. Remember our good friend JSON method to make sure that we can read this information. Let's save that. And go back here. Hey, success. We need to get the user profile because we have the token. Success, we need to get the user profile. If I go back and delete this session, go to console, and I refresh, nope, no success. You need to sign in, my friend. Very, very cool. All right, so in the next video, we're gonna implement this part of getting our user profile. I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye.